was very strange. I was expecting there to be the big flashy opening, but it for some reason came in halfway through. But anyway, I digress. Welcome to another Friday night feature and welcome back. I think last week we were on Thursday, so we're back on the Friday. We're back in to open the weekend for you. So it's really good to be back. As you can see from the title today, we're going to be talking about WWE Women's Division in 2024 and the current kind of state, and some big questions that really have to be asked when we're talking about the women's division for WWE, because as I said in the description, it's stacked at the moment. There is so much to enjoy when it comes to the women's division, but it could be more. And I think there's some big questions that we need to ask. So if you are watching along right now and you're thinking, oh, what's this guy going to be talking about? I want you to get involved in the conversation. I want you to be able to make this a conversation rather than just me talking to you for the next however long. My voice is going to go at some point. I've been battling with a bit of a cough, and it is just me tonight. So keep me company. Put your comments in. Make sure this turns into I can read them out. We can turn this into a conversation. Let me know your current thoughts on WWE's women's division and what they need to improve on, what they're doing well, everything like that. So I think we're having a good chat. So let's throw up something prettier than my face, which is some flashy slides. And we'll go through different things. See in the questions that I kind of asked in the description is there currently a booking problem when it comes to the women's division? What, is there an underlying issue that's going on? Have they kind of backed themselves into a corner? Who are the future stars of the division? Bigger question, I guess, that we might end on is, will we ever see a WrestleMania Night 2 main event that featured the women rather than the men? Because I think we've had a Night 1, which was Sasha Banks, and she was involved in the Bianca Belair match a few years ago. But we haven't had a main event on Night 2 yet for the women. And personally, from my perspective, having been to some of these Night 2 is the main event. It is the one that closes WrestleMania for that year. That is the main event. And I think what we want to see is the best possible story in that position. So can we get the women to that position? But let's start off what kind of prompted this decision to talk about this tonight. On Raw, they had a big 10-women tag team match, which seemed to be thrown together to try and give as many of the women's roster a chance to be on the show as possible. Now, obviously, at the moment, Raw is down to 2 hours. Raw is kind of shortened. They've had that extra hour to play with. They have had all the extra time taken away. And then we're now left with, a third of that, what we've been used to, running time just gone for a little while anyway. So with that, people are going to miss out. They're not going to be able to kind of have their chance to get TV time. And this just felt like we've kind of gone back a little bit in terms of the Vince days of when the women would be thrown into these multi-women matches or multi-person tag team matches just to get them on the card, just to get people out there. I don't like the fact that they're doing this personally. I think they need to actually really commit some more people within the creative team to book the women's division and individuals into a position where people care and they want to see that storyline on TV outside of Rhea Ripley, because that's I've said it a few times now with Rhea in particular. I kind of feel like they've been backed into a corner where she's so popular and so over. She's almost gone down that route of like China, where she's almost transcending the division that she was in, but they won't unleash her into the sort of mixed matches, as it were. So you're kind of stuck with someone who's really over, but they're not elevating anyone else at the same time. So she's kind of up in that upper echelon. And right now she doesn't have the belt, but if you put the belt on her, then who's legitimately going to be able to take it off of her? Who's going to be able to beat her without there being these kind of antics going on? And we saw it at the weekend at Bad Blood where we had, Raquel Gonzalez coming in. So what we need is the booking team and the creative team to come up with something a bit more meaty for them. So at the moment, even two of the bigger players within the women's roster that we've got have got the tag team titles. So they've kind of got Bianca and Jade that they don't really have a single opportunity for. And I know there's those other reasons in terms of Jade needs to be built up with being she's still a little bit green in the ring. She needs that little bit of polish. She's getting a little bit better each time you see her, sort of thing, and her presentation's fantastic. But in terms of moving her on, in terms and getting onto a singles program, obviously next it seems like she might go up against Sasha Banks. But these are two people who could potentially be in that main event, but we kind of feel stuck in the sense of like a lot of them are now being teamed up. So what we actually want is more creativity to be pushed out. I mentioned Rhea because, as I say, she's so dominant and has been for so long, and she looks a star and is a star, and she's, I have no doubt that she's probably one of the more popular people on any of the roster, men or women's roster. I just think she's one of the ones who's got massively over, but they've failed at the same time to bring anyone up to her level. Obviously, she was waylaid for a little while with that injury, and then Liv kind of stepped into that position. I think Liv's been a decent champion, probably better this reign than she's been with any other time that she's had the belt. She's done great character work, but then they kind of do what they did with Rhea, where they shuffled her into the Judgment Day pack, and it's got a little bit lost in the sense of like she's the women's champion, Liv, but it's kind of lost in translation a little bit because she's involved in like a bigger storyline rather than it being around that title, which to me, again, another misstep. And then you kind of have Rhea like there on her own. Everyone's waiting for her to come back, and they want her to be the the big the top superstar, the top women's superstar. But she's so over. Say, where's the competition coming from? So let me know, guys, in the comments. Am I way off on this? Is Rhea almost an issue, not by any fault of her own, but because we're waiting for someone else to step up into that position? And this isn't something that's new. This has been developed because we had once upon a time, the four horsewomen, and everything was kind of structured and revolved around them. So you had Becky and Charlotte, you had Sasha and Bayley as well. And to a degree, Bayley's the only one who's left at the moment in the company that's doing anything. Becky's on hiatus; she's contracted run out. We've got Charlotte who's coming back from pretty serious injury. But what we needed was when these legends of the women's division who have built it up to what it is today. I just kind of feel like these were needed at that time to build the next stars. You always see the guys when they've been going out and retired, they go out and they put someone over on the way out. Whether you agree with it or not, you've got people like Kurt Angle who put over Baron Corbin. Didn't work, but that was the idea behind it. You pass that on. When Undertaker leaves or Stone Cold leaves and Rock leaves, they've always tried to go out for a little bit. John Cena tried a couple of years back to put as many people over as possible, get them into that position. And Austin Theory, Solo Sikoa, they're trying different things to get new guys into prominent positions. But the women's division never really did that. Now we're stuck where we kind of need Becky and Charlotte in particular back, whether people want to admit it or not. They are the stalwarts of the division, and they're the ones who fans could believe that if you beat these, then you've made it and you can move up to the next echelon and you can move up. It's why Rhea has got to where she got, because she beat Charlotte Flair, she beat Becky, and she looked dominant in doing so. And without these people that kind of do that and gatekeep the division on purpose, you're not going to be able to get the best and create these superstars where people believe that they're every bit as good as Charlotte and Becky were when they were at their height. So yeah, we're just missing something. Mark's chipped in. Our moderators chipped in with a couple of comments there. This is only women's main event for night 2 I can see is Becky versus Rhea. But there's the problem, is that we had Becky versus Rhea at WrestleMania this year, and it was on night 1, if I remember rightly. Didn't main event. Because it always seems to be like the men have a bigger story going on and one that people are more invested in. So I just don't think they've got that position. And unless they can create lightning in a bottle again, like they did with Becky, and they really stayed into the man thing, and then you combine that with Rhea's star power, then maybe there's a way to get there. But the creative team has got to come up with something to push them there. The whole Judgment Day needs to go now. Finn and JD have not defended the title in so long. Liv feels like an afterthought. Dom is too big for the group, and Carlito, well, he shouldn't have even been there. Yeah, there's a lot there to kind of agree with. Carlito was almost, I guess he kind of took over our Truth comedy stuff, and he was there as kind of like almost like another lackey. But I mean, Finn and JD did defend it against the New Day not too long ago, but it was more about, that showing that dissension in the ranks of the New Day, and Xavier potentially going a separate way, and wanting bigger and better things. But yeah, it kind of feels like the tag teams again. I could do a whole Friday night feature on the tag team division, because we saw a fantastic match last week on SmackDown where we had the triple threat ladder match, but why wasn't that on the pay-per-view instead of Nia Jax versus Bayley again? Because nothing happened that couldn't have happened on SmackDown. So again, the tag team division, but then we're back again and go, the women's division needs matches on premium live events. But was that the right one to have on? I'm not too sure. But at the same time, is maybe they could just add an extra match on. They could have 5 matches is great, but I kind of feel like they could put on an extra one if it deserves to be there. And I feel like the tag team division one, because of how good the match was, I think it should have been on the premium live event instead. But yeah, Liv as the champion needs a bit more respect on her name. I do feel like because she's been stuck with the Rhea stuff, like no one else has even had a sniff. Like you've not even had some backstage stuff outside of it, really, where people go, "I want your title." Why is it always Rhea? Like, where's my shot? Like, you can't, they've been lumped to every other woman on the roster on Raw has been lumped into that 10 women tag team match. Who's going to kind of put the head above the wall next and say, I want the shot? And that's the thing that we're missing. So, and now we've got, as Mark says, we're going to have Nia versus Liv going into Crown Jewel for one of the new titles, the Crown Jewel titles, where it's champion versus champion, and Nia versus Liv. Like Liv's a very, very capable wrestler, but it's just kind of like who's the good guy in that story? Who's the face? And is that potentially where Tiffany Stratton gets it, because she gets herself involved during that match? Is that the way you do it? She can kind of become a double champion. It is very messy. So unless there's a plan to kind of get themselves out of that before then, that's not a match I don't think anyone's going to be like, if they had to part money for it, they're not going to sell the pay-per-view on that, are they? What we did see on elsewhere off Raw and SmackDown is we do see NXT featuring the women's division very heavily, and we actually saw Jade and Bianca down there this week in the 6-women tag team match. Had a little bit more, I guess, behind it because they've been having these backstage segments and Fatal Attraction, I think they're called, kind of bumping into them and calling them out for the tag team division. We're going to see a tag team titles on the line tonight on SmackDown, when, again, NXT stepping up. Lash Legend is going to be stepping up to go for those tag team titles. So, seeing Metaphor going for the tag team division, we're going to get a bit of rub for NXT, which is great, but it's also just kind of proof that Shawn Michaels seems to be putting a lot more behind the women's division. And they need that. They need that conveyor belt of talent to come through, because we need some new blood over on NXT, on SmackDown and on Raw from NXT. So there's a lot to kind of love about that. Jake's just joined us. Hey, Jake. Hope you had a good shift at work, and you're hopefully looking forward to the weekend now. But good to have you in, my friend. Let us know how you're doing. What's your opinions, Jake, on the women's division at the moment? What they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and how can they improve, all that sort of stuff. Let me know in the comments. The other thing is, we've got people who are very capable up and down the roster, like Chelsea Green, Mia Yim, or Mishin, or whatever name you want to call it at the moment. Very entertaining dumpster match last week. Chelsea Green, I've got to say, and people might not really appreciate the comedy side of things. I think she'd be a perfect different kind of champion, where she kind of flukes wins and things like that. But she's someone who just works her ass off like every week with anything that she gets. And yeah, this is kind of like a little bit juvenile in the sense of like they're carrying on the like she smells sort of thing after being in the dumpster. But like, look back, she took a massive bump off the ladder not that long ago. She took this, which was a pretty gnarly looking powerbomb into the dumpster and just missed her head. But she's like great at everything that she does. Again, very capable wrestler in the ring, super entertaining, and she's starting to get a bit more backing as well on social media. So it'd be great to see a little bit of a throwback. I'm not saying they have to go back to the Divas era, But Chelsea Green as a champion would just give you something a little bit different for a change. It doesn't always have to be the strongest and toughest. We get into wrestling because of the characters. I just think like the pop she would get if she were to win the championship, and this is maybe where we could talk about a mid-card title. I don't want it to be called the Intercontinental or Women's Intercontinental Championship or the Women's US Championship. Give them a completely new, different championship to create history in their lineage from it. Chelsea Green would be a perfect shout for that. Mia Yim, again, really good in the ring. She's someone who would really benefit from that. It would give people a chance to go for gold outside of the main belts. That's why we have the IC title, we have the US title in the men's division, but you don't have that in the women's division. It's almost like, all right, if you're not going to get the main championship belts in the women's division, you got to get someone else and go for a tag team, because that's the only way you're going to get any kind of gold. So they need something new for the women's division to kind of spark it into life, but it still wouldn't address the fact that a mid-card title isn't going to get onto the main event of a premium live event. And that's where you got a bit of an issue, is how do you get a storyline for the women on such fire and electricity going through it that actually people are calling for that to be the main event and not CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre or not a Bloodline storyline. But that's where they're really struggling. And I mean, the great news that I think broke earlier today is it sounds like Rhea Ripley has signed a very long-term contract with WWE, so they're obviously going to be building the women's division, the company around her for a long time. So they've got a lot of people very capable of kind of pushing on. Now they need to kind of attach the creativity behind it as well. Jake says, I agree, give them a completely new championship with a new name. I think they're going to go do the women's IC and US title names. Yeah, they should use different names, but it's WWE. They'll just copy and paste again. Yeah, and that's what's disappointing. Is kind of like, at least in NXT, they kind of introduced that North American Championship, but then they did the Women's North American Championship, and they kind of uniform it. And I get that to an extent, but I think it'd just be really exciting and fresh for them to give them something different. Maybe bring back a European title, or I know that was confusing because the name, you didn't have to be from Europe, etc. Or bring back a TV title. AEW has a lot of different titles, but that goes back to, your WCW, your ECW days where you have that kind of that TV title instead. And then you can get away with having it on SmackDown and really build people to be excited about it. So yeah, personally, I think it'd be a great shout for them to do. We also saw Candice LeRae became the first Speed Women's Champion as well this week. So really interesting for them. And I guess like we come to who are we looking at in the future that could be big names. Tiffany Stratton has come on leaps and bounds since she started. Obviously, WWE did the NIL or the NIL program, which is kind of taking athletes rather than wrestlers and then building them into superstars. So Tiffany Stratton is going to go down as a shining example of that. Her character, she's nailed down. They've really kind of put the wagon on her. They've really hitched it to her star, and a lot of people now are actually just waiting for that moment where she does cash in the Money in the Bank. So for me, Tiffany Stratton is going to have a huge future. I think she's someone who, like, WWE are going to be really hot on for as long as she keeps her nose clean and kind of just cracks on. But she's been built into a star, and people are now desperate for her to cash in and take it off of Nia. Will they do that? Because I'd be much more interested in Tiffany Stratton versus Liv Morgan than I would Nia Jax versus Liv Morgan, especially when Nia Jax won the Queen of the Ring in Saudi not too long ago. Seems like they're making her win an awful lot of championships and accolades and things like that at the moment. So I think I'd like to see Tiffany involved in that before. Chris is in. Hello, Chris. Are you okay? How's life going? 5-year anniversary of Bayley turning heel. Destroyed her Bayley buddies and became WWE SmackDown Women's Champion against Charlotte Flair. Some good knowledge there. And that 5 years ago, that doesn't seem possible. It just seems like a couple of years, but I'll take your word for it. But yeah, Bayley's come a long way in terms of like she's gone full heel and then kind of came back to the middle, and now she seems to be back onto being a face again. I don't think she was ever successfully like a heel that people hated because she's always had a bit of charisma about her. So, yeah, 5 years, that seems crazy that it's been that long. Look down on NXT as well. Future stars, you've got the likes of Cora Jade. You've got the NXT Women's Champion, Roxanne Perez, as well. These are two that I think a lot of people thought, even a couple of years back, these are the two that are going to go on to be, big deals when it comes to the WWE Women's Division. Roxanne Perez has been building her fan base for a long time. TNA, you've got Roxy. Sam's a big fan of her. He's been a big fan of her for a long time. I think they've started and really have started to build out her character a bit more, which is fantastic to see, because before that she was almost like a sort of like Bayley-like character, and we just needed a bit more than that from her. And now that she's gone heel, and we're going to get to see eventually Roxanne Perez versus Cora Jade, which they've been trying to do for a while, but one's always injured or out, and it's never fully aligned up. But for now, we're getting this kind of uneasy alliance. Cora Jade as well. She went from being a skater. She's got a little bit more presence about her. I think there's a lot of people who are interested to see how she gets on now that she's back from injury. And you just kind of want to see her stay healthy for a while now. There's been a lot of ACL injuries down in NXT in the women's division. And you don't really want to see that. You want to see them thrive and kind of go on to bigger and better things, like Nikita Lyons, another bad injury. But we've got people like Sol Ruka who are coming through. And then it brings us to some of the imports NXT has been doing as well, because we have got Julia, who we've seen in action a few times now. Obviously, she got screwed out by Cora Jade, but Stephanie Vacker as well came out and is kind of like challenged that she wanted the winner. And we've got Delta, who they've been doing some like sort of tease promos for as well, Australian wrestler, big powerhouse woman, which would be something completely different to what we've seen before as well. So NXT really is where you want to be looking if you're looking for WWE's women's division and the future of it. I think there's so many people within the next 2 years that we moved up and on that conveyor belt, and that's going to flood that main roster through with so many new talents and new faces for people to get behind. I think Julia and Stephanie Vacker look incredible. They look like superstars already. I think they'll both be in NXT for a little bit. But as you say, Mark mentioned it there. He says, don't know why, but I think Cora Jade beats Roxanne for the title. Can definitely see that. Chris says Cora Jade stay healthy. Yeah, and Jordan Grace seems like she's likely to move across from TNA. I believe her contract's up either at the end of the year or beginning of next year with TNA. And she'd be another fantastic capture. I don't think she needs to go into NXT. Yes, she might want the belt, but she's someone who's so capable in the ring, and we've seen in the Royal Rumble, so people know who she is already as well, and she had a good turn in the Royal Rumble. So do we see Jordan Grace come back in to the Royal Rumble? Do we see her, start up something straight away with someone on the main roster? That's always, especially if you then add in Charlotte and Becky, and then you've got so many different players that could, really boost that division, and that's what we want to see. I just want to see so many options for people to get behind, and then social media decide. It seems to social media and the live attendances, they're going to be the ones who decide who is the future and who we're going to build it around. But I think that's what we're looking for, in the sense of how do we get the women into the main event of a premium live event? Well, you've got to make us care first and foremost, in terms of, can you make us care as much as the Bloodline storyline did? Can you make us care as much as CM Punk and Drew McIntyre? Because I'd argue they could have main evented, and even they couldn't get on. So you've got to go one bigger, and you've got to almost be as big as Roman levels of stardom. Or if Roman's not on the card, you've got to be bigger than Cody or Seth. Until they can build that, that's where they're going to be in trouble. So, yeah, I don't know if people will agree with me on that one or not, but I think they've got the work cut out for them. I do trust that they will put more attention behind it, but I think they're Raw and SmackDown are leaving a lot to be desired at the moment when it comes to the women's division. And I really do think that they need to step up. A couple of comments on NXT. I still think Julia is beating Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship, says Chris. Mark says they should have done it last week. Yeah, they had that fantastic opening on the CW last week, and then continued that this week as well. with Randy Orton main eventing against Javon Evans. So NXT is doing some great stuff, not just in the women's division, but in general. But it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon when it comes to the women's division getting pushed. So Marks has now fully blamed The Rock for the card for Bad Blood being changed. Same Rock who won't be allowed to wrestle on Mania 41, according to Wrestling Observer. I can't see how that's true. I saw that news that The Rock potentially isn't going to be they told WWE that he won't be available for Mania 41. I really struggle with that because surely he's not just going to go, well, I'll do the Roman stuff at the Rumble and then be gone. Yes, I know he's a movie star these days. I just don't understand how they can have all this build and he's really into it and really excited and then just doesn't come back for for that massive match against Roman on the biggest stage of them all, which is where he said it's going to happen. It just feels like something's a little bit off. I don't know if there's certain misinformation being spread around purposely by WWE or The Rock or someone just to throw people off. But it feels like something's going on there. And I know there's an article going on WrestleSphere where it talks about a triple threat would be the wrong move in terms of Cody versus The Rock versus Roman at WrestleMania. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do because as this is all about the women's division, I just adamantly believe they've got to do something to get the women's division on one of the nights as the main event, even if you do have the likes of Seth versus Cody and that kind of touted. But I want to see the women step up and be given something that the fans are screaming for to have a prominent position on the card. So let me know what in the comments. I'm gonna wrap up here. Let me know in the comments if you were looking forward to WrestleMania 41. What are the matches that you think are going to be going on in the women's division? That's the sort of the big question I'll leave you with. Feel free to comment, and if I don't see it before I go here, I'll certainly respond to you after the fact. But yeah, I'm hoping we'll have Sam back next week. He's busy tonight watching Terrify 3. With chainsaws going in various areas you would never want chainsaws to go. But yeah, I'm sure Sam will be back. I almost had Dan join us, but the only way you can find out who's going to be joining us is making sure that you subscribe to both Wrestling Royalty and Give Me a Hell Yeah. Got some changes coming up in the future, but if you click that notification bell, you'll hear all about them. But thank you very much for joining me. My voice, as you can probably tell, has gone off a cliff, and I'm struggling to keep going. But I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy if you're watching AEW. I think it's Wrestle Dream this weekend. Enjoy that as well. Enjoy any wrestling that you're going to. And I will see you next week. I've been Andy. This has been Gimme Ho Yeah. This has been Wrestling Royalty. And I will see you very soon.